Good morning. My name is Manuel Sanchez. I'm a team leader for Smart Grid at the European Commission in DG Energy, and I'm working on the retail market units and the Directorate for Internal Energy Market. We are organizing today, I'm going to moderate an event we are organizing today together with Esmig and the European Energy Retailer, organized by the European Commission under the European Union Sustainable Energy Week, the EUSEP 2020 this year. This webinar is going to be concentrated in something very important for directly affecting the interest of consumer, and it's about the data, how download the data of a consumer and how a consumer can share the data. I think it's tremendously important and tremendously on time after the adoption of the electricity energy market. We had about more than 80 participants some days ago. Probably we are rising about 100 participants. We will stay from now about 10 to 12. The agenda is structured in 4 blocks. In the first block, we have an opening speech and invite the speakers, where the opening speech is going to be by Caterina Sicomagni. Hi, good morning, Caterina.
Everybody.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's a special mention on you that is the first day you are acting, just a director of the internal energy market. Congratulations, and I hope you will never forget about this first public intervention as our director in energy market. The other invited speakers we have to talk. Here is Dina Filio. Good morning, Dina.
Good morning to.
Yeah, she's a policy officer at the Smart Grid team, and she's absolutely focused her work since many years already on the smart meters and the data. Particularly now, she's working on the interoperability, quite strong, and the harmonization of procedure for sharing data and access to data. It's going to be quite interesting, her speech about the market design provisions. Also, we had invited, of course, the industry, and one of the co-organizers is Patrick Keger-Schmidt. Good morning, Patrick.
Good morning, everybody.
He is an ex-co-member of Esmig, the industry who manufacturing the smart meter in Europe, and also he's a CEO of GEO. We will see also he's good to talk also about access to data and the relevance of a smart meter in this new ecosystem. Going to the next block is a panel discussion where we have 7 experts, and we try to have as much of a wider view into the discussion. We are starting from Monica Boulder. Monica, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
She's the energy team leader at BEUC, which is the European Consumer Association. I say we are going to talk on things affecting directly consumer, and of course we have to get here the Consumer Association, the boss of the consumer. Then we go into the industry, the retailer, the European energy retailers. Good morning, Michelle Governatori.
Good morning, thank you.
Also, we continue with the industry now. Patrick, I presented to you already. He's going to be also part of the panel, providing the manufacturer point of view and the technology point of view. Then Lucy Sarkisian. She's good morning, Lucy.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, she's a chairperson or a chairwoman at AVIX. AVIX is a modeling of business information, really very, very much interesting because all the standards are being based on those models. And she's doing those models in close collaboration with industry, and particularly with DSOs and TSOs. And then we go to the system operators, the DSOs and TSOs. We have George Hartner. Good morning, George.
Good morning, Manuel. Good morning, everybody.
He is from the Austria, and he's an expert on energy data at GEODE. It's a European DSO association. And we have another George, with also another system operator, but this is a transmission system operator in Estonia, in ENER. George Rute. Good morning, George.
Morning, Manuel. Pleasure to be here. Hello, everyone.
He is the digitalization manager at ENER in Estonia. And last but not least, we have again the retailer industry, Antonio Colino. Good morning, Antonio.
Good morning, everybody.
He is the new president of the European Energy Retailer Association. Last but not least, after this block, we will have some question, actions, and interactions. We are preparing a live poll in order to get some flavor about your opinion on key questions. Particularly 3 questions will be go down. I mean, please vote on those questions. It will be quite interesting to get your views. And to finalize, of course, we have a closing remark. That time we give it to Dieter Brunner. Good morning, Dieter.
Good morning, Manuel. Good morning, everybody.
He's going to conclude and provide such a global vision of the discussion. He's the president of Esmig, and I could be really, I'm very much excited to see how he's concluding the I guess, very intensive discussion. Well, say that my introduction, I want to give the floor to Lena Morris from Esmig. She is, as always we say, without her, that this web doesn't happen, because she is supporting us in the organization of it. And she wants to communicate to you some housekeeping rules. Go ahead, Lena.
Thank you very much, Manuel. Good morning, everyone. I would just like to take a second to highlight some key points. As a participant, you will all be muted, but you can ask questions through the chat box. You can also include the name of your organization if you wish, and please write the full question in one text box so that we do not lose part of it. Panelists will take questions at the end of their presentation and during the Q&A at the very end. You will indeed be invited to take part in 3 live polls at the end. If you do have any problems voting in the polls, please try to exit full screen on your PC and try again. You can engage with us on Twitter with the following hashtags. The webinar will be recorded, so when you do ask a question through the chat box, your name will be visible and may be read out loud by Manuel. If you have any concerns about this, please do let us know after the webinar. The full agenda is available in the handout section. For any technical issues, you can use the chat box or you can text or call me on the following number. And after the meeting, there will be a follow-up with all the slides, the results from the live poll, and the recording. That's all from me, so back over to you, Manuel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lena. Now let us start. I think we have invite Katerina to give us the welcome, the opening, and also the directions of the policy drivers for this activity. Well, Katerina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Manuel. Good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me well. So indeed, it is a great pleasure to be here today and to speak with you and to discuss with you the important question of data. And as Manuel kindly said, it is will be memorable for me as the first meeting that I take place after having been appointed formally the Director of Internal Energy Market. I'm also very pleased that I can continue working with all of you on this very important topic that relates to data. As Manuel already said, this event today is part of the extended program of the European Sustainable Energy Week. So it is to give you a teaser for what will follow next week with numerous sessions, not as many as there used to be in the pre-COVID times. I think we have organized this year something like 30 sessions, which will take place next week, all virtually as well. So welcome again. I was very impressed to hear how many people have connected to this meeting, and which shows the importance of what we are going to discuss during this morning. So data, energy data, and how to use it, how to get our fingertips on it, so that we are all best served. We consider data and its smart use as key for our quest to ensure the supply of green, secure, affordable energy and a fully integrated, interconnected and digitalized EU energy market. The question now is, what does it take to deliver this from the energy side, so that we will meet the twin objectives of a green and a digital transition? The Commission, of course, has worked on assessing and analyzing how to deliver these twin objectives. The recently published EU recovery plan puts these objectives as the flagship of the EU recovery after the COVID crisis. So both the Green Deal and the digital agenda form the basis for relaunching the European economy, so that it will become also more efficient, but also fairer and more resilient. The green and digital transition are the case in energy. It means quite a substantial transformation of the energy sector. It means more physical, more virtual, more interconnections. It means smarter networks and a fully integrated energy system. Digitalization and data play a key role in achieving these objectives. Data and uninterrupted data flows are key for the seamless and timely communication in order then to support the EU economy, to increase competition on the market, and by enabling the consumer to take the central position of managing our consumption and production. So data-driven services are the key, the central point of the clean energy package. The retail markets will form a more important role in all this integrated approach than perhaps some years ago we would have thought. The move to a smart energy system requires the rollout of smart meters. It will bring about important new data, which will provide all the participants, be it consumers, network operators, suppliers, third parties, or service providers, the possibility to offer new services, new business models, new flexibility, etc. So for all this to happen, the data needs to be accessible in a secure, efficient, and non-discriminatory way. That is why the Clean Energy Package includes many measures to ensure that this data will be available or is made available in such a way. And it is, of course, key that there is confidence that the data is reliable, but more importantly, perhaps even that it is secure, given all the issues related to cyber security. So in this respect, the Clean Energy Package foresees the development of an EU-wide implementing rules and interoperability arrangements. These are all related to what we call the implementing acts that are already, we have started preparing them, and these rules are applicable also in relation to general data protection regulation, where data is identified as personal. So an important point to keep in mind. As I briefly already mentioned, we have started already working with many of you in implementing the provisions of the Clean Energy Package and preparing the so-called implementing acts that relate to data. The Smart Grids Task Force will form the main sounding board and will provide the main experts for this work. These arrangements related to interoperability are the first step to start looking into how the data can be accessed and protected and provided. So just very briefly then to conclude, data interoperability itself is actually an enabler for this competitive market to function at its best. It gives the right tools to consumers to exercise informed choices and to service providers the means and a reassuring environment to improve existing services, to develop new services that benefit all consumers and businesses alike. For all these developments, data is key. It needs to be easily accessed, it needs to be secure, it needs to be non-discriminatory and transparent. So therefore, the session we are having here today is of key importance. We need to discuss today and later on as well on whether our energy data is a couple of clicks away. Is it easily accessible? If not, what is keeping us from having it at our fingertips, and what to do in order to make this happen in the best way possible. So I look forward very much to the discussion of the session today. I'm sure that after the many presentations of this morning, we will be much wiser on this issue. So I can only wish you a very fruitful debate, and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you very much. Back to you, Manuel.
Thank you very much, Katarina. Really clear messages. If I may, I can make emphasis on two of them. The relation, the strong relation between the Green Deal and the digital era. This is something I think everybody in participating today recognize, and also the change of paradigm from the energy-only market to the data-driven services market. And here is where the retail market is being important and delivering new services driving data, which is very important for consumer and of course for market actors. With that, thank you very much, Katarina, again. I hope you never forget this day and the relevance of data in the whole businesses and activities for the years ahead. Say that, let's go to the next speaker. It's my colleague Dina Filio. She's going to talk about the smartness of the data and the interoperability, and particularly the activities Katarina has introduced. We are just launching under the Smart Grid Task Force. Dina, please.
Good morning to all. Thank you, Manuel, for the introduction. I'm very happy to be here with you today. I will be spending the next few minutes discussing how to get the most out of data, which is a new asset, as we heard. Data can be of value and service to consumers and also the system as a whole. But who's interested in data? Here we can see consumers are interested in data, network operators, suppliers, third parties, and new energy services providers. Consumers, first of all, because they need data to monitor their energy behavior and modulate it accordingly, or if they are prosumers, they need to know exactly when it's the right moment to start injecting into the grid. And in both cases, they can get rewarded for doing so. The network operators, they need data to exercise the regulated activities. They are interested in data for forecasting, technical reasons, but also they need market information. And this is detailed enough information they need, and actually at the right granularity. We also see very important that distribution system operators and transmission system operators, they work together to plan the grid. Obviously, the more information they have about that, the more they know about patterns, the better they can plan the grid. But also suppliers need data, whether it is for issuing our bill or for making us a new tailored offer. And so do third parties or new energy service providers, new entrants. There is so much they can offer with data when they have access to data, in particularly in near real time. So for running the network, running the market, or even getting actively involved in there, we need easy, safe, secure, and timely access to data in a clear and transparent way. So data does have value for all these actors that we said, and given its value, we need to create a level playing field for accessing it. And this is what we have done in the clean energy package. There we have included a number of principles for the non-discriminatory and transparent access to data. And we have also said that these principles have to be complied with in order to ensure that those that they are eligible to access data, they do so on equal footing and in a clear way. We also ensure that the right tools are in place. So in the clean energy package, we have a set of requirements to have fit for purpose smart metering being rolled out in Europe. Smart meters with the right functionalities that they can support this availability of data. They can make data available as required and when required. In addition, we gave to member states the responsibility to define detailed rules in order to ensure access to data by eligible parties under the principles that we have set in the Electricity Directive and in line with the applicable EU legislation. And here, for instance, I'm referring to personal data. We all know that this needs to be available under the conditions that they are clearly set in the General Data Protection Regulation. This is the umbrella framework for data protection. To monitor things and to ensure that all is running smoothly, we have also introduced a strong oversight by the regulator. This is clearly mentioned in the Clean Energy Package. We see in the Electricity Directive in Article 23 is actually mentioned that the compliance requirements need to be in place, and the network and the national regulatory authorities are the ones overseeing the application of these measures. There is also the possibility there to appoint compliance officers. These will be responsible for monitoring the measures that they are taking on the ground by those handling data. On top of that, the Commission will be developing, as Katerina mentioned, a set of implementing acts that is secondary legislation, putting forward interoperability requirements and procedures for the transparent and non-discriminatory access to data and the exchange of data. These will be based on existing national practices, as we have said, and standards where they are available. We believe that this type of implementing rules will bring closer the national arrangements, the different national arrangements we see today, and will also facilitate the interoperability within the EU. They will help better run existing processes and will support the development and the delivery of new data-driven services and products. They will also lower the barriers for new entrants, and this is what it will boost up competition in the internal market. We have already started preparing the ground, and we are doing this for this secondary legislation with the help of the Smart Grids Task Force. This is an advisory platform to the Commission. The experts there are already considering different business use cases where data access and exchange is involved. They are proposing this concept of a reference model that evolves over time as the way forward in order to reach and maintain interoperability for given processes. So the idea behind this model is that you have a core that consists of a number of elements that they are already common in EU member states for a given process, and it's also flexible enough to allow for national specificities to exist. The important element is that this model is not static in time. It's actually evolving. So its core will be expanding as time goes by and as there is readiness to include more and more elements, more and more features into its core, commonalities among the EU member states, and as national specificities cease to exist. The experts intend to test drive this concept of the reference model, looking first of all at consumption data and looking at the business use cases to start with of download and share my data for both historical and near real-time data. In order to wrap up what we have said on this issue of data, I have prepared the following slide. So closing, I would like to highlight these key messages. For us, smooth, easy, and timely access to data is a must for data-driven services. They are this type of services. They are obviously of interest and benefit to consumers and the system as a whole. We believe very much that we have reflected that in the provisions we have in the clean energy package, and particularly in the electricity directive, we're saying explicitly how important it is, and that's why the measures read as such, to have transparent, non-discriminatory, safe and smooth access to data by those eligible. We must ensure, though, that these do not stay just on paper, that these principles are indeed properly implemented on the ground. So we will be concentrating our efforts from our side in the coming period to deliver this secondary legislation on data interoperability, starting, as I said, with the first business use cases of download and share my data. We think that this will pave the way for making energy data indeed easily available to all those who need it, whether they are energy consumers, they are utilities or businesses, so they can benefit from these smart services that meet their interests and their expectations. For us, data interoperability, it is an enabler for well-functioning competitive energy markets. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Dina. Quite interesting and quite encouraged to do that. One question probably is still not presented here and could be clarified in a few seconds or less than in 1 minute. It's about the time schedule of this implementing act. What are the plans? When really we can say to consumer, hey, we are working for that, but in what time you're going to get it?
For the first phase, the first implementing acts on the business use cases of download and share my data, as I said, we expect to have this ready in 2021. So next year, end of next year, it should be in place.
That's great. I like how Commission is working on that. Very good. Thank you very much again, Dina. Let's go now to the second invited speaker. It's Patrick. Is going to talk from the industry side. Patrick, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Manuel. It's a pleasure to be talking to you. Good morning, everybody. Just to introduce myself, I'm representing Esmig today, which stands for the European Smart Meter Interest Group, which is a trade association fronting for manufacturers of equipment, for data services, for security companies, and for communication technologies. It's been going now for over 10 years, and it's been very instrumental in forging alliances around Europe between different parties who are involved in the smart metering game. In my spare time, I'm chief executive of a company called Geo, which is a UK company specializing in consumer interfaces and consumer feedback devices like in-home displays and apps and so on. And Geo now has somewhere around 7 million devices in homes, helping people to understand energy. Next slide, please, Lena. Great. So if I can direct the starting point of this to smart meters when they originally were conceived as being ways of automating the capture of billing data, and that indeed is still seen as their primary function. However, that is really only stage one of their purpose in life. Stage two is a very much more important one, which is feeding information to consumers, or this is an equally important, not more important, and that is done by local area networks or connections within the home, as opposed to the billing side of the data flows. But really, where the greatest value probably comes is in stage three, which is enabling demand-side flexibility to be introduced. And if we move to the next slide, I'll show this diagrammatically. Here we have the DSO or the utility company, whether it's a distribution company or in some markets, the energy retailer, who owns the meter and has billing data sent automatically over the air to them or down the wire. That is one part of the data flow. The second is the horizontal arrow going to the left at the bottom, which is to an energy management app or to an energy management service, which in its own right communicates with an ESCO or energy service company, which is basically providing services to the consumer. If we flip onto the next animation, please, you can see that this divides between the enterprise and the home, and between regulated monopolies and competitive market players, as the ESCOs are. And down in the left-hand corner, we've got basically what the demand response services will be doing in this competitive model, which is controlling devices in the home to manage load, to shift load, to optimize the use of energy at the cheapest time of day when it is being generated or when it's being generated in excess. And really the key loads there are transport and heating and cooling devices. They constitute 70 to 80% of the household consumption, and they are the ones which are eminently controllable. So within this overall model, if we move to the next animation, please, one more. You can see that the data flow from the meter to the energy management systems within the home needs to be real time or very near real time, and that in providing flexibility services, the feedback from the meter is absolutely vital in this instance. And Tina was outlining how that's going to be brought into effect. So what I think is a really key component of this is that demand response services have to be implemented in the home if we are to manage the grids of the future, the fully flexible electric grids, from the point of view that 70% of the peaks that occur on the grid are driven by home residential use or small businesses. And that's the late afternoon, early evening peaks. And if we cannot control those, the costs of reinforcing the grid and other management techniques is going to involve us with very large amounts of reinforcement expenditure. And thus the market needs to open up for residential demand response to enable that condition to be avoided. So if we could move on, please. So this then looks at, well, what is the consumer impact of this data flow? What can the consumer do with it? And this is the result of a very extensive survey conducted for Esmig 2 years ago. And it looks at roughly 500 different trials and pilot programs which have been introduced over the last 10 years or so, right around the globe. And it's studying the impact of different types of feedback to consumers. And on the left, you have the in-home display or the visual output. And on the right, you have much more informative bills, which is driven by data analysis of the billing information. And in between, you've got mobile apps and web portals and so on. And what this is basically saying, over 5.5 million people involved in these different trials, so it's big scale, is that you can see with consumer information, the IHD and a very close equivalent, the ambient display, which shows you some form of visualization of how much energy you're using in real time, can save a consumer between 7 and 8% of the energy that they're consuming. So it's a very significant impact, whereas just a more informative bill still has an impact, but it's down at 3.5%. And this is not just research, this is actually playing out in one of the big markets in Europe, which is the UK, where in-home displays have been mandated by the government. And you can see that across the 9 million homes which have now been installed with smart meters and displays, the average consumption reduction is between 3 and 4%, right across the board for all users, both for electricity and for gas. So there is no doubt that informing consumers can have a material effect on consumption patterns. If we move on, please, Lena. So here is the benchmark report DG ENER did, looking at the different smart meter standards across Europe. And it's really answering the question of how well are we doing in providing this real-time data. And you can see that some countries only have daily reads, 4 countries, and there are 5 countries only with near real-time, as in sub 10 second or sub 10 second. And many have intermediary levels. Now, my point here would be for feedback to consumers, every 15 minutes is pretty well the minimum that is actually of use. Every 10 seconds is really the valuable data. But for demand response services, you really need to be under 10 seconds for the data to be of value. You have to be able to tell that the demand response action has had a result. And steering the whole of the rollouts towards more granular data is a very fundamental step. Next slide, please. This slightly difficult table for everybody to read is a 2018 asset study. And there are 3 key functionalities which are shown in column 5 here. And you can see that only about 60% of countries have all of the functionalities in their present smart meter rollouts, which are required to support the DSR capability, the demand response service capability. Now that needs to be rectified over the course of time. Next slide, please. So my conclusions then, everybody please be aware that the 2 data flows are very different. Billing data to the utility and real-time data in the home are actually quite different things. And whether the home is communicated over a wire or over a wireless network, or whether it's a port which you plug a transmitter in, which sends it to other devices, doesn't matter. The 2 types of data are very fundamentally separated. The second is clearly, as Tina has mentioned, we need standards for consumption data. But what is really crucial is that we have to enable consumers to get access to this data. And by and large, there are not many countries in Europe which are encouraging wholesale access to consumers in a meaningful way. And one point I would emphasize is that the UK has done something quite unique, which I think is a valuable template. It has set up an industry body which is basically there to promote the use of consumer data to the country, and it has a budget which is hundreds of millions of pounds. And it is that sort of scale of intervention which, in our view, needs to be done in order to get consumer access to data clearly on the agenda and clearly understood by consumers. And my third concluding comment would be, this is a complicated system. There are many market parties who participate in this, whether they're manufacturers, whether they're system operators, whether they're doing billing systems, security systems, or interfacing with demand response services and aggregation level as an energy service company. And cooperation of those market parties is absolutely essential for this very complex market to lift off in a way which is going to be meaningful to grid interaction and grid efficiency over time. And Manuel, that's my comments for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Quite comprehensive and clear messages. I think it's a good bridge with the initiation of the panel, and particularly in the way we had foreseen this starting point through the opinion of the consumer voice about this. Exactly the point in your conclusion, how consumer can access to the data, and also how make this data useful to the consumer. Monica, he brings you the question to your presentation. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Manuel, and many thanks to organizers for organizing it, because I think it's a very important topic, and inviting me as well. And I would like to also use this opportunity to congratulate Katarina on your new job. I think it's an excellent topic to start the week off as well. So yes, thanks. I will try to share the consumer perspective in a very short few minutes. So I hear data is key, data is important for new services. There we agree. I think we really need new services so that consumers are kind of supported in their sustainable behavior. That means they can be more energy efficient, they can make more sustainable choices, they can generate electricity, they can consume electricity they produce at home easily. These kind of services we need. We also see that consumers are more and more willing to engage in the market, which is kind of changing. If you look at markets right now, but many people are still not switching that often, or some people never switch their energy supplier. So this is important to consider. Why do we need new services? Now, if we talk about smart technologies, smart services, dynamic pricing, I hear that we need data or information less than every 10 seconds. And I understand there is a different type of information. But all in all, there will be a huge amount of data collected through different technologies. So we need to pay attention to how this data is used and how to make sure that it's not misused. And you see my first point, which is full compliance with GDPR. And for many of you, it may sound as evidence, but we looked last year and in 2018, which was the year of GDPR entering into application. We looked at privacy policies and contracts of different companies. And we found out that there are companies which can implement GDPR, and they do it in a very good way. For instance, in privacy policies, it's clear what are my rights. But we saw also quite some alarming clauses. I can give you an example. There were, for instance, clauses where data was shared with third parties, which had nothing to do with the service. There was a lack of information or unclear information about what are my rights, data portability, deletion. There was also lack of information about who has access to my data. And in one case, we saw that the consumer even had to pay for accessing his data. So that's why I put the full compliance with the GDPR, that is, be clear about who has access to data, where is it stored, for how long, and so on. Use data minimization, purpose limitation, privacy by design principles. And design or respect consumer rights to access their data. I think this is very important. The second point, of course, we are entering new services, and when we listen to consumers, what are their main interests and what are their main concerns, data or impact on their privacy comes across very often on top. So it's a very important concern. That means that companies, and we would like to see companies going beyond mere compliance with the GDPR. So, for instance, always ask for consent for the use of data for any marketing-related practices, even if this could be already considered as a legitimate interest under GDPR. Or make sure that as a consumer, I can fully control the list or the third parties who have access to my data. Having said that, I think that this is possible to do, and we need to try, and we hope that the companies will be innovative enough to think about the services and how to make access to data and how to make the data useful and the services useful to consumers. From a consumer perspective, the access to data is key. We are talking about metering data, sub-metering, but also maybe Patrick was talking about the information we get through smart meters. What's also important for consumers is to see the information per appliance. If my, for instance, fridge is consuming too much, I should be able to see that so that I can then make a better choice. More granular information will also, for instance, make the business case or illustrate to consumers the return on their investment in case they go for replacing one of their appliances. Smart metering data, of course, the bill and the in-home display, there are different types of ways how to provide feedback, and we can talk about it. I can talk about it for a long time. It needs to be also accompanied with personalized tips, with more advice on how to work with the information. It's not only consumers are not going to see or understand the technicalities. Having said that, I think there is a huge potential for new services thanks to data, be it for comparison. We talk about dynamic pricing. How can I use the information, my consumption information, to compare different dynamic offers? How can I, for instance, work with the data if I have solar panels on my roof and I want to self-consume more? So there is a huge potential for new services, and we hope that there will be more and more on offer. And I would like to maybe finish with the last point, which is more general points about the future rules on data access, that these should be really designed with the consumers at the core. And that's why we have been, and it has been mentioned here already before, we think that the focus should be on 4 pillars. That means well-functioning competitive market, make sure that there is enough consumer protection, promote the public interest, and make sure there is consistent oversight and enforcement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you very much. We have not so much question now for you, but then we go, because of the time, probably we can go through all the people in the panel. If I receive question from the audience, I will put to you if something urgent, otherwise I will pass to the fine. Let's go now to another perspective, really the industry, the supplier, the retail. And for that, we have Michele Governatori, with a long experience as a retailer in Italy. Please, Michele.
Thank you. Good morning again. Yeah, I will mention something already introduced by Patrick and Monica. I'm focusing very much in these 5 minutes on beyond the matter services and what will probably happen within energy communities. My impression, what I see, looking at what retailers are at least trying to develop, is that there will be more and more action in transactions beyond the matters. What does it mean? It means, in my opinion, that we will have to allow for some usage of beyond the matter data, also for kind of billing purposes. What do I mean? I mean that if we want to foster self-consumption, as Monica said, if you want to enable demand response, at some point we will have to, retailers will have to transform those signals into billing relevant information, right? So what I expect is that also from the regulators, it may be useful to ease this process and to help retailers and customers to understand how data looks like even before they are sent to the aggregation systems managed by the metering entities, which are in most Europe the DSOs. So what I see in the future is that a retailer might use even instant data in order to, for example, manage an energy community. It might base their bills on those data, and at some point there needs to be a reconciliation with official data, relevant data which are collected by the DSOs in order to reconcile all the invoices. This is a big change, actually, because I have worked for 20 years in energy retailers, and for us the classic attitude was data becomes relevant for invoicing when it's validated by the DSO and the tax authority, which is linked to that stream of data who goes from the meter to DSO. We will have more and more to cope with other data which are beyond the data, and if an aggregation of them goes to the DSO, it goes to them later. So there is something to figure out about how reconciliation will happen. Of course, if we want beyond the matter services to be interesting and really to ease the life of retailers, we will have to reduce as much as possible the costs for installing devices beyond the matter. But I would say also to reduce the information cost for the energy retailers. I think that it is common knowledge for probably for all of us that a very big entry barrier to competition is failure for customers to have a clear picture of how to read a bill, how to implement those nice possibilities of doing self-consumption, how to consume their own photovoltaic energy, or the photovoltaic energy coming from a neighbor. So I think we will have to develop a kind of a platform, which might also be an informative platform and a competitive platform where it will be easy also for appliance manufacturer, which will be, in my opinion, integrated with software manufacturer in order to, through the retailers, offer a suite, a package which enable easily a home consumer to become a prosumer, able to react to signals and to do self-consumption and so on. So I think there is still room for regulation from the European Union in implementing the fourth package, but also from the energy national regulators. And the aim, in my opinion, should be, if possible, first to foster competition in systems beyond the matter, so easing the market, but in the same time, protection of customers should also include protection to customers in choosing those systems, and, for example, being acceptably reliant that if they buy a software plus hardware beyond the meter system in their house, they will be also able to use that with a different retailer, for example, which is clearly written in the red, for example, when speaking about energy communities, but it's not as easy to be implemented. So I think we have thrilling times, very interesting times ahead, and the role of regulators is still beginning in this new area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michel. You have entered the conversation in the quite interesting part, in the bulk of the discussion. That's clear. Let's now go give the floor to, again, the industry, the smart meter manufacturer, which might complement it to your point of view of how to commercialize with the data. I think what you make also in your presentation, in your couple of minutes presentation, is we have to make a distinction between what is historical data and the near real-time data. That was very much discussed during the negotiation of the package. And the other thing is the competitive platforms. I think the DSOs, TSOs at the end are going to talk on that in the panel. Well, as I say, let's go to the smart manufacturer. Patrick, you have now the choice again to tell us your point for this panel.
Thank you, Manuel. I've had plenty of airtime, so I'll try and keep this quite brief. I think the two main points I want to bring out here. One is that for energy to be managed, it must be visible. I think we've established that's the case for real-time data. And I just want to look at a few of the reasons why it's important for consumers. The first is just very simply having real-time feedback allows people to see whether or not they're using a lot of energy, which they don't need to, or whether they've left something on by mistake. So there's a very, very immediate sort of clock on the wall type information flow to users. But what's much more interesting is that as we come into time of use tariffs being very largely available, and that is time of use by the half hour, not just a block here and one or two blocks in a day of changing time of use, but a really dynamic time of use every half hour. Consumers will realize that across a day, the price might vary between 1 and 5 times 1, very big variations across 1.5 hour to another, and being able to see which are the periods of the day to avoid because you're paying a lot for energy and when to turn appliances on is really a very useful use case for people, and it has a really significant effect. I think the second major point is if you can download your historical data, then it's possible to send it off to either a comparison agency or to a new potential supplier and say, this is my profile of usage. What is the best tariff for me that you can offer? That whole process is something which consumers ought to have the ability to do, but until we get the standardization of formats and the availability to download it right, consumers will not take advantage of it. The third one is that in terms of energy data being converted through data science into disaggregated information, which gives you an itemized bill, not just what your bill is today, this month, this week, but actually what's using what in the house, is a huge impact for people to say, now I realize that washing machine is using much more than it should do. It's time to change it. So all of these use cases are really important for a householder to be able to understand and to go up the learning curve. The second major point is around DSR. As we decarbonize our housing stock, as we move away from gas heating, everything will become more and more concentrated around electricity. And as more heating and more transport is done with electricity and more generation has become renewable, the mismatch between what's happening in the home and what's happening in generation will get greater and greater. The debates about whether the market can keep up with these changes in fluctuations in supply and demand, but they will happen. And if it's to work at a residential level successfully, this process has to be automated. But we have to be in a position where consumers can override that automation and can say, I want my car charged, I need to go out this evening, I don't care what DSR services are doing, I want my car working. Or I do want my heating on because I've got my grandmother coming for tea this evening. And I don't care what the history is or what somebody might pay me, I just want my house warm. So in that respect, the consumer becomes a really fundamental party to it and must remain in control. Those are the two main points I wanted to make at the moment, Manuel.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Yeah, we'll come back for sure on these 2 points later. Let's go, time is now pressuring me. Let's go to the next, Lucy, which is going to talk about the models and how to make this from a very much independent way. Lucy, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much. I am representing today EBIX, which is European Forum for Business Information Exchange. In parallel, I work full-time at TENET, a Dutch TSO, for 15 years. And whatever path I have chosen in my career, from system operations to markets and then European regulation, I always stood with this data exchange and always been part of EBIX. As it started because of how I started my career in energy sector. So what I want to tell here is, by the way, I'm so sorry I put 4 key messages, they're not 3, so but I couldn't let the last one, you know, I wanted to show this one also. So while we have seen all these discussions and lots of slides on how we should access the data, how important the data is, I think I would like to show you another part of it, the implementation of information exchange and why is it important to do it in a harmonized way in Europe. So, you know, one of the features of liberalized market is the fact that we got lots of more and more roles. So we don't have any more vertically based companies. So we have lots of roles in the energy sector, while in Holland, we have imbalance settlement done by TSO. For example, in Austria, it is done by independent company. So that's why what is important in my view when modeling the information exchange, it is very, very important to think in the roles and in responsibilities on the lowest level of information exchange. And I'm very happy to say that EBIX, by the way, maybe a few words on EBIX. EBIX is a voluntary organization of TSOs, DSOs, and suppliers and associations. All started in Scandinavia, Scandic countries, when they started the liberalization. There was this EDIL group who, all these countries came together and said, let's see how we can help to liberalize the market and to harmonize information exchange, electronic information exchange between these roles. So it started with EDIFACT messages, and after that, the Belgium and Holland joined the EDIL, and so EBIX was born, the European Forum. Recently, we have 15 countries. I think Estonia was the last one joined us, Georg, very good. And what we try to do is to specify the business processes in electricity and gas sector, because we understood that a switch of supplier, most probably 80% will be the same in all countries. So let's make it that 80%, let's harmonize as much as possible. So by saying that, we did all the processes in retail markets, all the information exchange needed to support the processes, supplier chain, meter data exchange, data for billing, and so on and so on. So what we also achieved, and what we also seen, you know, this TSO corporation is very, very sensitive. You would say highly politically sensitive. But what we have seen in EBIX, when you think not from company names like TSO, but from roles and responsibilities, you really can work together very well in this matter. So we have seen that this really worked, and ENSOE together with EBIX and together with EFET in last 20 years worked on harmonized role model. And this role model is the overview of all the roles in the sector and all the responsibilities and the main, let's say, processes between them. And based on this role model, we are modeling all the processes further. So what we also have seen is that when we talk about standards, we have to be a little bit careful, because we have to understand that standard is, it's good to have a standard for, I don't know, for these things, you know, for mobile phones or whatever. But when it comes to information exchange in energy sector, it is important to have a core information model. But it is also very, very important that national customization is possible, because we, of course, Dina, you mentioned very well that this further evolution of what you are doing, what we are doing in EBIX, will bring maybe us even more closer, so the regulation, so the national regulation can be changed and can be more harmonized in Europe. But at the moment, and when we started with liberalization, it was clear that 80% is the same, but there is this 20% which is not the same, and it's okay, because if you push for full standardization of the processes, then the standard will be no one's. So that's one, I think it's important to have a core process model, and you already said that, Dina. So I'm very happy with your slides, by the way. My slide could have been your conclusion slide, if I may say so. And of course, it's important that what we do based on open standards when it comes to technical parts like XML schemes and things like that, and that they are technology neutral. So these are the key messages I would like to give you. And I think it is important that harmonization goes further in Europe. We have seen that 60% of Europe is based on already what these 15 countries did together in EBIX. And why is it important? Because it is also making easier for participants to join the market, because as a big BRP, balance responsible party, of course, can have 10 different IT systems, but for small ones, it's difficult. The same for suppliers, and so on and so on. So we believe that harmonization, we don't do harmonization for sake of harmonization. It's not the case, but we do believe that harmonized way of dealing with processes within retail markets, like supplier change, like meter data for billing, whatever, it's important. So these are my key messages. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Was clear, and it's clear. I mean, the harmonized rule model is a solution to today's challenge we are discussing. Probably we'll have more time if I don't see that a specific question now for you, but probably because questions are coming after presentations, I accumulating and taking note on that, and we'll come back to you with particular questions. Let's go now to the system operators' perspective and experiences, and here we have the distributed system operator and the transmission system operator. Let us start for George. Both are George. Let us start for George Hartner. He's representing the distributed system operators.
Yeah, hello, thank you, Manuel. Thank you, Lucy. A lot of the things that Lucy said, I can just, I just wanted to say the same, so to say. So I was working in the last term of Expert Group 1, Data Formats and Procedures in the Smart Grids Task Force. And we were mainly active in the fields of interoperability and emerging services, which dealt with data sharing, data access, and exchange. As some of you know, like in the beginning, there was discussion about the full harmonization or a common European data format that should be described. And during our discussions, we came to the conclusion that it would make sense to rather focus on interoperability than on harmonization. And the first step towards interoperability should be comparability between national structures. And that came from the observation that it is very hard, like if you want to make yourself a picture of how data sharing is done in Austria, in France, in the Nordics, it's always very hard to get to know, well, who is the metadata responsible? Where is it documented? What do I need to do data sharing? Where do I get an ID or a key pair? Where do I need to register as a service? What needs to be done to my content that might be used? And for this comparability is very important to get an overview, to define a baseline before you try to engineer a target. So we used this. We came to a similar conclusion as EPICS, of course. The harmonized electricity market role model is, I think, a good basis. Probably it should be refined a bit in a way that stakeholder management and stakeholder process could probably be a bit clearer, or discussions. Then of course, we also need a way to define the processes and the information exchange. And a very good basis for us was the smart grids architecture model. We also saw, like we were working on the My Energy Data report, and the My Energy Data report from the expert group was taken as into the IEC and has been formed as the My Energy Data standard. We also share the observation that Patrick reflected, that near real-time data should be treated differently than validated consumption data. And data sharing, the capability will be used cross-functionally. So we need to take care of it, because the use case of giving your historic consumption data to a new supplier to make you a potential offer is a bit different from potential sub-use cases in flexibility, where data sharing is probably used for baselining or for settlement. So that is a thing that we should consider, and that criticality levels of different use cases or services based on that data might be a bit different. We don't see like a structure or infrastructure, a European data hub or whatever above national structures as desirable, because we think it is not really necessary, and it creates risky dependencies, and it's also a bit problematic with the principles of the GDPR, and it's not really good for risk mitigation. So what we're working on currently is a some sort of reference model that respects these things of this decentralized approach. And yeah, and we like in the last term of EG1, as I said, we were working on the My Energy Data process family, and in our work there, we were cooperating closely with France, with ENEDIS, who are operating a central data hub, and which is a completely different data management architecture that we have in Austria. Like in Austria, we have a decentralized architecture where data is only exchanged within a clearly defined business process context. And the My Energy Data family supports both different data management architectures, and we just wanted to prove that it is possible to do data sharing or to enable data sharing for both approaches.
And this is the challenge you have. Okay, thank you very much for that introduction to the two different architecture and the big challenge you have in front. Let's go now to the view of the TSO. George is going to talk about the Estonian experience and also how this is disseminating with certain alliance about the TSOs. George, please.
Hello, everyone. So imagine the world in 5 years' time. We will have more renewables. The price of electricity will go up and down. Just last week in Estonia, we had 200 euros for price of energy. And imagine now that you have an app on your phone that you can download, and just like you download it, you consent to sharing your data, and now your electric vehicle or your smart thermostat can save you money. Imagine that world. One of the steps that we need to get there is that we have so many markets in Europe. There's the access to data is fragmented in Europe. So the innovators who build those apps, they cannot offer the service to you. Before I joined ENER, I started a demand response aggregator in Estonia. And the first thing we did was we left Estonia because Estonia only has 1 million people. It's not a big enough market. So we need to integrate our markets. That's what the European Commission is aiming to do. We need to have a single energy market for innovation so that I, as a homeowner, you as a homeowner, get the best services that you need. And ENER is a transmission system operator. We are 100% government owned. We are not active on the market. Our purpose and our mission is to support market functioning. And we see that access to data is a key barrier. Talking about people are at the center of it, and people need to have trust. And what is trust based on? If you trust somebody, if you trust the service, you know what you get in return, and you know that they are being honest. So there are a few prerequisites for people to trust sharing their data. There needs to be transparency, and for that there needs to be somebody who provides overview of who's used your data and for what purposes. So for these apps to be able to be easy to use, you also need to have some place where you see who has used your data and for what purposes. So that's what you need for trust, and we have that in Estonia since 2017. There are several countries in Europe that already have it, and many countries have different approaches to achieving it, but I'm sure we can have a single European energy market based on data access across borders. The one thing about energy data is that it's data from your home. It's very personal. And there was a joke in The Economist a few weeks ago, which is if the European Union had a religion, what would it be? And the religion of European Union, of the European Commission, would be privacy. It's a joke, but of course, privacy means a lot to all Europeans. So we need to safeguard our privacy. And talking about privacy and people and energy companies operating freely, utilities, DSOs, TSOs are very good at security. We are not so good at user interfaces and making things easy to use, but we are very good at security. So being with security oriented, we can build the data access systems that energy companies can use. There may be a role for somebody to simplify the access, as there are cases of companies bridging utilities to innovators. But in any case, what is necessary is energy companies need to have easy access. And so who are these energy companies? They can be large and small. And if a large energy company goes to a new market, they typically buy an existing company, because the existing company that in the new market already has all the integration, supply, switch messages, and all those other things. They are only recently starting to look at doing digital platform-based businesses that can grow across Europe. And the reason is, again, that energy retail markets in Europe are fragmented. So in our vision with the grid operators who are working in this alliance, we want to have a European energy market where companies can operate across the EU, go from one country to the other without having to rebuild their IT backend. So we are working together with the countries that are listed to bridge together our data information systems. So this is a bottom-up approach of like-minded companies who want to increase innovation on the energy market. And just to highlight that this will bring a whole new level of competition to retail markets if companies can easily move across borders. So there will be winners and losers. And typically the winners will be the innovators and losers will be those who are less innovative. And also, of course, it is a threat to existing energy companies. So in Estonia, when we liberalized our energy market 10 years ago, the incumbent company very quickly lost 40% of market share. So it was not in the interest of the incumbent company, that was the energy supplier and distribution network. It was not in their interest to open market up. So we see in Europe, there are those who support and those who don't support, and many of those who are not supporting have in their parent company market share to lose. So the European Commission is leading the interoperability work and making sure that in all European countries we open up the data, that energy data is easily accessible and shareable across borders, and people have trust and transparency into the system. And final thought, that in 2020 we are halfway to 2050. We measure our carbon goals against 1990. We have 30 years to go to reach carbon neutrality. We should not be bickering about we should be getting things done. So I hope that with the excellent work of the Commission in interoperability acts and with the ability of bottom-up collaboration, we will get there in 2023 with a single data access platform for Europe from bottom up. So thank you, and happy to take questions.
Thank you, George. Interesting. We will come back. There are already questions about the legacy of the systems, and interoperability is the key answer. Last but not least in the panel is Antonio Colino, is the president of the European Energy Retailers. Please, let's try to condensate, because I really interested on the questions.
Okay, hi again. I'll try to go fast about it. So, I mean, my first point is that we all understand that the consumer empowerment is one of the key things we have to do to achieve the objectives we have for 2050. And what I see in this sense is that typically when we're seeing in the press releases or in the news something about energy transition, what we're seeing a lot is about infrastructures. So we're seeing a lot about new renewable plants, storage infrastructure, electric vehicle infrastructure, but we're still not seeing that much about this consumer engagement. I think we all here agree that the consumer is one of the keys, but the consumer still is not feeling that pressure, no, about what he has to do to change things and to balance energy renewable with them. So one of the things we have to do is this engagement, no, and for sure, and I think also, no, the people that spoke before agrees that is the data-driven engagement is going to be the key for this. In this digitalized world where we live, it's going to be key that the consumer has this app, can look that info, can have beyond the meter information, and us as retailers, service providers, aggregators, we're able to not only give pure market services that we were speaking about, flexibility, or speaking about demand side participation in the market, but also, I mean, for a domestic customer, there's not going to be much money to win in those markets, because it's going to be 1-2 euros megawatt. There's not a lot, but we can do a lot of things with the customer to put him objectives, play games with him, give him points that then he can win travel if he's consuming the best of his neighborhood or things like that. No? So there's a lot of things we have to do, and it's going to be data driven, everything. In this sense, and I agree with Patrick at the beginning, he said that, okay, there's a first stage that it's hardware deployment, but as I put there, no, hardware deployment by its own, it's pointless. No, it's not going to fulfill the objectives. We have I have personally a very clear example in Spain that we have one of the biggest networks of smart meters, but we don't have the protocols that allow anybody to use them. So at the end, as retailers, we deployed a lot of systems with these smart meters only for invoicing, but we receive the information once a week. So it's not being useful to really exploit all the potential they have. So hardware by its own is not the point. It's what we're debating here. What is the key, and what well, Manuel, Dina were explaining about the expert group that is going to deploy these protocols, and this implementing act is key, no, to allow all this. And finally, a little reflection about where to do all this, no, to implement these protocols that are going to be defined, because as we see it, unless we're able to demonstrate a full unbundling of incumbent companies that have DSOs, retailers, and different businesses to work, if we're not able to demonstrate that this unbundling is real and effective, then probably in those countries, integrated data hub is going to be something that is the most efficient way to assure this level playing field. No? And what George was saying before, no, like, okay, probably this could be in the grid, in the transmission grid operators. If there's a national transmission grid operator, it could be in another type of technological party, in another part of issue. But the thing is that we need to assure that we have integrated data hub that allows everybody to work with it. And it's not only about the protocols, about how this is implemented and what is implemented, but it's going to be a lot about also who is implementing it and where it's going to be implemented to assure this level of playing field. And that's about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antonio. Thank you very much. I think, well, all the views are really complementing, and really is an overview for the vast number of details we can find in this activity. I have 3 questions from the audience, and let me allow to answer those from the answer, to put the question to you. Well, one thing you should know is we have about 90 people participating in the webinar. I have a question from Inogi to Constantina. It's concerning one of the slides she presented. You say that the third party needs a grid data. Could you describe what kind of data a third party needs about the grids? Constantina, you can be short on that. Nina?
Yes, I was referring to data that they can get from the meters in order to know, for instance, if somebody is a prosumer and would like to inject into the grid, and he has a special product, a special service provided by a third party, then he needs to have information also of technical nature. This type of data I was referring to.
Congestion, no congestion, status of the grid, etc. All right, there is another question. This is for Patrick. It's about the real near-time data, and then is this aggregation based on 1 to 10 second consumption data realistic?
It is realistic. It's being done in a number of places. It does require you to export quite a lot of data from the home in order to achieve it, but it can be done. You can do disaggregation on 15-minute data as well, but the shorter the time periods, the more accurate it becomes. So yeah, it's perfectly realistic.
Okay, there is a question which is not directed to particularly a particular panelist, but I guess it's more to the retailer and Esmig also. It's about the legacy. mean, one of the big things in this system is the legacy, and particularly when you have been talking about the behind the meter and so on, communication behind the meter. How are the data out of many of different legacy systems? How you are going to connect those?
Well, maybe also Esmig might have
it's Esmig and ENER.
But I mean, for us, that's also what I was explaining a little bit, that we see that if we define all these protocols and we have an integrated data hub that has the different gateways with different type of legacy systems, when we're going to be able to be more efficient, on having something that has different gateways to connect these legacy systems. Also, I see some points there about legacy systems where if we're deploying a lot of meters, but they are with a technology like power line connection, for example, then we have a legacy problem there because they are not connected directly to the internet, but they have to go to another part. So, I mean, that's going to be one of the issues. I saw George standing up the hand. Maybe he wants to answer.
Yeah. May I talk?
Yeah, sure. Shortly, that's clear.
I just wanted to say something about the data hub topic. I think we raised some concerns in our groups, and we, like, in our opinion, we shouldn't always go for central data hubs because there's also other means to ensure interoperability and the level playing field.
In 1 minute, we have 1 minute.
Okay,
only.
all right, good. But what I'm saying is just that central data hubs also add intransparency and cause a lot of costs if you compare it to other solutions. I just don't see it as a single way to solve things here.
All right. Well, I think one of the other natural questions where everybody could think about are coming now in the number of 3 questions we had prepared for the audience and all the participants. I pass the floor to Lena, who has prepared this alive or direct questionnaire. Please.
Yep. Thanks, Manuel. I will run through each of the 3 poll questions and their results consecutively, and then I will let you comment on the end. Okay, so you should see on your screen now the first question. So what is the main barrier to access to consumption data faced by the energy service providers? Regulatory barrier, this would mean current regulatory environment is not yet suited for an efficient introduction of the energy flexibility management. Technical, no uniform data format and requirements for data security. Information barrier, consumers are not aware of the benefits of sharing their energy data. Okay, so we're collecting responses now. You can see they're still coming in.
We have to say that the answer for that is only to attendees, not to the participants, speakers or panelists.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When I show the results, everyone will be able to see it. Okay, we have 48% have voted. I'll give it another second. Okay.
Excuse me, can I say something? I cannot click on.
Yeah, because it's only for the participants and not for panelists.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have clarified that again at the beginning. You will now see the results on your screen now, though.
Well, more than majority is thinking regulatory barrier. Well, I don't know what is a regulatory barrier or mainly the implementation of what we have already in the regulation, because as Dina said at the beginning, regulation is demanding a lot of activities here, however, are not being implemented. And probably we have to put together that is not a more regulation, not more law, but implementation probably on the 16 new law, what is the clean energy package. That's my interpretation. If anybody want to make a comment on that? All right, otherwise we go to the next question.
Okay, you should be seeing it on the screen now. What would be the optimal party to be designated to develop an integrated data hub? You can now vote. Okay, the votes are coming in. I will give it another second.
That's really quite interesting.
Votes are still coming, 50%. Okay, and now I will close it. And you will now see the answers.
Well, 1/4 DSO and 35% free. Okay. But in any case, it shows also the different opinion through the geography and local conditions and member state conditions. I think it's fine so far. All of them are working in a transparent and non-discriminatory way. That's fine. But it's good to know that this is 1/4 for the DSOs should manage the data. This is particularly describes some provisions in the design, in the market design. But that's really interesting that 35%, the majority, I mean, the majority in comparison with that is left to the market to organize itself. Okay, good. We go to the next. Anyone?
Okay,
yeah?
and for the final one. Okay, what is the principal reason for low consumer engagement with household energy? You can go ahead and vote.
Yeah, we have to see here that is only one reason, or the top reason for you why they are low participation of consumer. And you will see that without the consumer consent and without the consumer participation, all the data sharing, all the data market and so on are not possible, all the new market design.
Okay, votes are still coming in. I will give it one more second. Okay.
Wow, with large difference is a lack of user-friendly access to consumption. I think this is something also quite in line with the main concern and the main message from BEUC, that sometimes this is very technical, which means not understanding, because you never put on the choices of the consumer when you design how to access to data. Are not simple. This is my message here. Monica, I think you agree with that a lot.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Yeah, I think the result is very interesting, and I think my message also came across that it's about user-friendly formats. And people will not, I would also, I mean, when you look at the results of the first option, so energy is too complex, what is a little bit concerning is that we may actually see even more complexity in the future. So I think it's very important that the user friendliness is there to have, we need demand for demand services, for demand side services. So let's keep that and maybe think about not only the data on from the smart meter, but also how to package it so that it's useful for the consumer and it's actionable for them.
one good lesson learned, or one good example, is what Patrick told us in GV about the in-home display, which is mandatory, and that's allowed control, I would say, of the bill in the 7.8%. However, it's this is one case. I mean, I think the key issue here is to provide kind of a more visualization of consumption that really help very much consumer, and in-home display is one way. Okay, that's from my side. Anything else, Elena, from your side?
No, that is our last poll, so we can move onwards.
Well, thank you very much, Elena. Of course, thank you very much to all the panelists to participate there and provide their opinions and clear messages in writing, and also to the audience. And well, everything goes to the end, and we are about 7 minutes to 12. And we had really exciting to see what is the conclusion remark from Dieter Brunner, which is going to be right now. Dieter, please, the floor is yours. You have to switch off on the microphone.
Thank you very much to everybody. Thank you for the very interesting and lively discussion. I think what we have seen today, when you look at the topic of the webinar, data at your fingertips, download data, share my data, we have seen that everybody on here has a complementary view. So we all see the need of those data sharing. But as you also could see in all these words, we need to have the data in a secure, efficient, non-discriminatory, in a transparent way, in an easy way, in an interoperable way. I think what we have been discussing at the end, that the whole thing is complex, and it will get more complex into the future, especially if we see our developments, which is supported by the European clean energy and the Green Deal, that we go much more in a way of prosumers, more acting consumers, the consumer engaged and also responsible for what he is doing. For all those things, we need the data. When you look at the polls, and the most interesting poll for me has been the question 3, to see why are the consumers till today not so much engaged on it. One of the things is clear: we don't are able to provide him the real data at the moment. But on the other side, in a complex system, the things also need to be in a way that it's easy to use, automatic to use, and only, as George Ruther said, only in the event when he needs to act or he would like to override, he should be able to jump in. But as soon as he should do daily things and daily act on it, I think that's a challenge for the prosumers. And I think also all of the prosumers are not just engaged to look at their energy consumption way of behavior. So this must be possibilities for them to do, but it's much more interesting, I think, for the industry, for the regulators to provide the real service and automated service out of it. I think we should not forget, as has been always a discussion, at the end it's the consumer who sits in the middle, and we should provide him the ability to act if he would like to act. And we need to engage him actively with the information, and this is what Patrick has shown on the studies which we did in Esmig, that if you provide the right level of information to the customers, then he understands also his behavior. We always say, when you drive, imagine you drive your car, and at the end of the year you get a bundle of tickets. You have no idea when did you drive too fast and what would you do different in the future, etc., because you can't relate to it. So it means when you get stopped immediately when you drive too fast, you know, and you can rethink. And it's the same with the information we should provide at our consumers. of course, we have to also look into the consumer protection and make sure that data belong to the consumer and they cannot be misused and they cannot be used without consent of the consumer itself. I think all in all, we had a very good, very broad view from all sides, from the industry, from the regulators, from the Europe Commission, which I really like that we actively move on of this. I think we are on a good way. But as also have been said before, looking into 2050 in a CO2 neutral environment, we have to speed up. We have to speed up. And we have to see that we're not over-regulating things, but also give a good and a clear framework to everybody to work with. Saying this, I would like to thank all the participants on this virtual roundtable, all the ones who have been providing slides and data, the organizers as well from the European Commission, to Manuel Sanchez for hosting, respectively managing the whole virtual session, as well as to EER and to Esmig for the providing of the base and the organization of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dieter. Say that I just say again, welcome, thank you very much to everybody for this participation. Thank you to Esmig and the ENER for supporting us into this EUSEF. And that's all. I think great conclusions, very complementing. And we have to take note that the consumer should have the choice, but not only the choice, also the ability and the tools to execute the choice. I think this is one of the big lesson learned, like Peter said. Thank you. That's all from my side. I think with that we can conclude and close the connection. Bye-bye. And
bye-bye.
Welcome.
Bye, everyone.
See you again
Bye.
in another EUSEF meeting. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.